A preschool owner named Melanie Smith recently noticed a strange trend. She's worked with toddlers for the last 35 years, but something about this new generation is different. The problem? Lunchtime. Melanie has always served home-cooked meals, real food filled with veggies, fruit, and protein. There were always a few picky eaters, that's normal, but all of a sudden, out of nowhere, almost every child in her classroom refused to eat. When the food was put down in front of them, some toddlers would begin to cry. Others would even vomit the moment they saw a cooked lunch. Melanie says, quote, "This new generation just doesn't seem to like texture." And you might be thinking, if these kids are terrified of normal food, what are they eating? And the answer is puffs, packets, cookies, and fruit snacks. The new era of baby food.
That was a dramatic reenactment of this article that was posted in The Guardian titled, "Ultra-Processed Babies. Are Toddler Snacks One of the Great Food Scandals of Our Time?" Really good article, and honestly, I'm just going to answer the question right now. Yes, they are. Have you been anywhere near the baby aisle in the grocery store lately? Well, I hadn't. So after reading this article, I went over there and I took a look to see what I could find. And what I found was shocking. Food aimed at children is already one of the most deceptive areas in the grocery store. But toddler snacks are on their own level of disturbing. And this article dives into the specifics of what is so messed up about this food that is being marketed to very young children and their new parents. For time-poor parents, straws, sticks, pouches, and powders can seem like a quick, convenient, and even healthy option. But these oversweetened, mushy foods are creating a generation of choosy consumers whose teeth are already rotting. Yeah, there are a ton of issues with these toddler foods, and today we're getting into it. Welcome back to another episode of news that will make you want to change your behavior. This article is written by food journalist B. Wilson, who's actually written several books on the food industry. It's really well written and it is a doozy. I've actually had this video written for months, but I've been putting it off because I've just been over making really dark content lately, but I feel like I'm finally ready. Also, quick disclaimer, I am not judging you if you are a parent and you have given this stuff to your toddlers. That is not the vibe. The vibe is awareness. There's a lot of trickery that's going on here, as you'll see, and I think it's just important to know what is going on so you can make informed decisions. Because that's the thing with these foods. They are deceptive. They do the most to seem as healthy as possible. And as we'll see in the video, that is a huge part of the problem here. But first, a quick message from today's sponsor, Factor. I love to cook and to try out new healthy recipes, and I'm all about eating a lot of fresh, whole foods. So I only like to eat takeout when I really want to eat takeout and not when I feel I have to because I got busy and was unprepared. And that's the thing, when life gets busy, it can hit you fast. Then there's less time to plan your meals, to grocery shop, to prep, cook, and clean up. It's easy to get off track, and that's why I'm so excited to be working with Factor. Factor delivers fresh, never frozen, chef-crafted, and dietitian-approved meals straight to your doorstep, ready to eat in just 2 minutes. I've been using Factor on and off for the past little while, and it is so helpful. Factor is owned by HelloFresh, and the concept is really similar, but in this case, the chefs actually cook the meal for you. It's insanely convenient, and the meals are really tasty. You just heat and eat. You can see the nutrition information and ingredients under each meal. The meals are pretty well balanced. You have a good ratio of protein, carbs, and healthy fats. They're a good size, and there's at least 2 vegetables in each. Recently, I went on vacation and I knew leading up to it that I was going to be so swamped. So this time I ordered Factor with my own money pre-sponsorship, and it filled in the gaps in my meal prep when I seriously had no time. It's a great way to eliminate all the stress around cooking and prepping and cleanup so you can stay focused on your goals. Head to factor75.com or click the link below and use code Kiana FB50 to get 50% off your first Factor box, plus free breakfast for 1 year. That's code Kiana FB50 at factor75.com to get 50% off, plus free breakfast for 1 year. Thanks to Factor for sponsoring this video. So let's get back to Melanie Smith's classroom full of ultra-processed food addicted toddlers. During the 10 years that Melanie Smith has been in charge at Portland, that's the name of the daycare, there have always been a fair number of picky eaters. A degree of fussiness about food is nothing new for this age group. If you didn't know, toddlers are famously fussy. They are famously picky about what they consume at that age. Smith says it was a normal part of nursery life to have children who struggled with certain vegetables or ones who liked dry food but not wet food. The difference now, Smith says, is that the nursery is seeing a lot of 3-year-olds for whom follow-on milk plus commercial baby food and other packaged snacks form 100% of their diet. So this woman has worked with toddlers for 35 years, and there's always been picky kids, part of being a toddler, as we said. But mysteriously, all of a sudden, you have a literal generation of babies who won't touch fruits and vegetables, who won't touch a whole range of simple home-cooked meals. Why? Well, as we'll see in this video, there is a whole system here, and it's resulting in kids only wanting to consume ultra-processed foods. But yeah, I really don't know anything about baby or toddler food. I never walked down that aisle of the grocery store, so I made a trip over there, and this is what I saw. You can see here, it's mostly these pouches. Jarred baby food has clearly been replaced by these pouches, and looking at the ingredients, they look fine, but we'll get into that later. There are also these puffy potato chip-like things, tons of cookies, and other random snacks. Thing is though, none of this necessarily looks like junk food, right? It's not like this is an aisle full of baby Doritos. Every food in this aisle is trying to look wholesome. Every single picture is of like smiling bananas and avocados. So as a parent, you'd expect that you'd be able to trust what you're buying. But the sad reality is like 90% of these foods are ultra processed, even though they're pretending to be healthy. And for those who don't know, here's a quick definition of an ultra processed food. An ultra processed food is a product made mostly from industrial ingredients and methods you wouldn't cook with at home, like additives, flavorings, and refined substances, rather than whole foods. It's not just cooked or packaged, it's an engineered food. An ultra-processed food is not the same as a processed food. Here's an example. Corn is an unprocessed food. A can of corn preserved in brine is a processed food, and corn chips are an ultra-processed food. And to be clear, not all food processing is bad. Olive oil, plain yogurt, cheese, these are all processed foods. But ultra-processing, it's in its own league. And it's often where the health and behavioral issues start to show up. And this is especially concerning with toddlers because the problem isn't just nutrition. These foods seem to be changing what kids want to eat and what they're willing to eat. Because when babies move on from milk to real food, they're not just eating, they are learning how to eat for the first time. And from what I understand, that means learning how to chew, learning how to move food around in their mouths, how to deal with new textures, how to deal with bitterness, all of it. That's why introducing things like broccoli is hard. Some kids will spit it out, they'll cry, they'll scream, and that's all normal. They're not just being difficult, they're literally learning how to eat with their mouths for the first time. But ultra-processed foods for toddlers mess with this process because they're not scary to babies. They're engineered to be soft, sweet, and safe. And this is messing with this process. They get used to this more safe food, and then they start to become afraid of real, normal food with all its textures and flavors. At the same time, Melanie says there has been a massive increase in toddlers with tooth decay, as well as a rise in the number of children reaching the age of 3 who are more or less nonverbal. She attributes this speech delay to the fact the skills and muscles needed for chewing are related to those needed for speech. That is so crazy. So the thing about ultra-processed foods is 9 times out of 10, they have added sugar, which can lead to tooth decay. Babies are naturally drawn to sweet taste, so these UPFs are exploiting that tendency, likely causing baby brains, just like adult brains, to want nothing but these foods, and rotting teeth in the process. This is like the 10th time I've read online now in various forums that this new generation of babies and toddlers has dental issues.
That one hurts me. That one hurts me. That one hurts me. All of them hurt me.
And on top of cavities, some scientists believe that our ultra-processed diet is stunting the development of our jaws. One theory is that eating hard, chewy foods such as raw vegetables and meat requires a greater bite force, with research in animals finding more forceful chewing stimulates the growth of the jawbone. Whole foods are a wide range of textures, from the crunch of a carrot to the chew of a steak, whereas UPFs are comparably very soft. These foods are broken down, reassembled, and designed to dissolve in your mouth. And this is potentially a problem when your jaw and facial muscles are still developing and need resistance to grow. And interestingly, a study published last year showed that children who consume more ultra-processed food had smaller, less developed jaws. Quote, diets based on ultra-processed food, which are soft and require minimal effort to chew, negatively impact jaw development. These foods, by failing to adequately stimulate the maxillofacial muscles and bones, can lead to underdeveloped bone structures and increase the risk of malocclusion and respiratory problems. Now, is this one study proof that this is happening for sure? No, but it's certainly a very interesting connection. And if we look at these ultra popular packets that these kids are meant to drink from, there's no chewing going on here at all. These little puffs are meant to just melt in your mouth, and even something like a Cheeto type texture, it might seem crunchy. It sounds crunchy when you bite into it, but the moment you do bite it, that crunch melts away and there's literally no resistance for the jaw at all. The food companies were literally like, what if we create baby food, toddler food that's bad for babies in literally every single way? And the craziest part is I don't really think anyone is doing anything about this. It's literally just food companies selling sneaky Cheetos to babies. Here's what B. Wilson had to say. The damage done to child health by commercial baby food and the failure of government to do anything to protect families from the marketing of it is one of the great untold food scandals of our time. If anyone should be protected from the ultra-processed world we are now living in, you might think it would be babies. As the World Health Organization states, babies need food that is pure, varied, minimally seasoned, and nutrient dense. Apart from meeting a child's needs in the short term, the food that they eat during their first few years of life is also equipping them with preferences for the future. Yet by the age of 2 to 5, the average UK toddler is getting 61% of their energy from ultra-processed foods, according to a 2022 study. And you know the food companies hear this and they're like, yeah, that's the best part. What don't you get about cradle to grave marketing? We get them from babies and then they're hooked on ultra processed foods for life. It's perfect. Like seriously, right now we are living in a world where our babies and toddlers are eating inappropriate, unhealthy food thanks to the lack of regulation of the food industry. Yet look at these headlines about ultra processed foods. Ultra processed foods, more addictive than heroin. The food industry looks at sweet little innocent toddlers and thinks, cha-ching. Also, what, like 5 CEOs can get bigger yachts or hang out in space or whatever they're up to? Right out of the gate, one of the main issues here is that almost all of these foods have added sugar. Meanwhile, the WHO specifically recommends that kids under 2 have 0 added sugar. Like guys, come on, you couldn't even follow the one major rule that's out there? Children who are fed diets high in added sugars are more likely than children with lower sugar intakes to have a number of negative health consequences as they develop, including childhood obesity, cardiovascular disease, and tooth decay. It is literally like giving them legal baby crack. I mean, no wonder these kids don't want to eat their vegetables. Why would they when they've tasted food specifically made to tickle their dopamine receptors? And the thing is, the stakes are really, really high here because as we've mentioned, quote, the first 2 years of life represent a crucial window of time for the rapidly developing infant and toddler to learn to accept and like healthy foods and establish long-term dietary patterns. As in, what they eat during these first few years impacts what they will want to eat and be willing to eat for life. Given only baby junk food, they will only want to have adult junk food. Then B. Wilson heads into the baby aisle herself. Have you been in the baby food aisle of a big supermarket lately? I had vague memories of lumpy purees and porridge in jars, plus crispy things in dreary packets. The baby food aisle has recently morphed into a brightly colored Snacktopia, colonized by a series of brilliantly marketed and fancifully shaped baby fast foods. There were puffs and straws, sticks and stars, biscotti and smoothie melts, sweet corn rings, and fish-shaped raspberry tiddlers. The jars of mush I remembered were still there, but now vastly outnumbered by row upon row of colorful pouches with bright and appealing graphics on the front. And again, this closely matches what we saw here in my local grocery store, full of these same snack foods. One of the cleverest marketing inventions of modern times is surely the baby snack. These nibbles sell parents the idea that they are helping their child's physical and social development, when what they're really buying is a tiny and very expensive packet of crisps and biscuits. Yeah, these foods are actually promising to be better than real food. That's the kicker. I typed baby snacks into Google and then pulled up the 7 that were advertised to me. Now, the very first thing that I noticed was that 3 of them were Gerber, which is Nestle's brand. Nestle, also known as the company who has been in hot water multiple times for their baby formula, most recently for intentionally putting sugar into their baby formula in poorer countries. Something the company knows is dangerous for babies, but does not care. Now, after looking into it, the second thing to notice here was that out of 7 products being advertised, only 2 of them didn't have added sugar. And the third thing that I noticed was that the journalist was absolutely correct. All of these products could be described as potato chips for babies. When you look at the ingredients, it's basically just different types of powders turned into a little puff or a cracker or a star. One of the first of these snacks to be sold in the UK back in 2006 was Organic's Melty Carrot Puffs, a kind of all-natural What's-Its. The fuck is a what's it? AKA to non-British people, basically a Cheeto. Organics Melty Carrot Puffs, a kind of all-natural Wotsits with their no-junk promise. Carrot Puffs have since been joined by a host of other melty snacks, all claiming to be perfect finger food for a developing child. Delight little learners with our melty veggie sticks, a scrum veggiumptious finger food to grab, hold, and happily munch, says the packet of Organics veggie sticks. The promise of meltiness preys on parents' understandable terror of a baby choking. But these snacks, organic or not, are also one of the reasons that many infants have not learned to chew properly, because they are quite unlike the crunchy textures of real food, the crispness of toast, the chewy juiciness of roasted carrots, or the crunch of an apple. Yeah, these literally could not look more like baby Cheetos. They are baby Cheetos. But I mean, other than that, look at this package. I mean, it seems healthy. I mean, it even won some sort of Made for Moms award. It's advertising vegetables, organic. We got a little innocent carrot mascot, a no junk promise. And the promise here is, oh, these are just like giving your baby carrots, except better, because your baby won't choke and die from them. And who can seriously resist a promise like that? Maybe I'm being naive here, but I think in most cases, parents are not intentionally buying their little toddlers junk food. But that's what's happening because feeding young kids is hard and probably scary. And these food companies, what they're doing is literally convincing parents that buying their snacks is actually better than buying real food or feeding them real food. They convince them that these snacks are specifically made for baby, they have everything baby needs, they're tailored to them, and thus they feel safer and like the better choice. Like you're doing the right thing by buying them. I don't have a kid yet, but I plan to have one at some point, and I can only imagine how terrifying it is at first to have a tiny little person 100% dependent on you with no instruction booklet. And I'm sure there's also that fear of like, well, what if I'm not giving them everything that they need to grow? What if I do the wrong thing nutritionally and I literally harm this baby? And these companies really play into that fear and promise you that technology is the answer. And I mean, why wouldn't you trust them? In a normal world, you would be able to trust what they say. You would think that a product that appeared to be healthy would be. This, for example, right? Gerber meals, pasta stars, and meat sauce. This one's not even a snack, it's a meal. And if anything should be healthy, it's this. Yet it has various different types of added sugar, but it's not listed as sugar on the label. It's listed as different fruit concentrates, which despite the word fruit concentrates are classified as added sugar in Canada and the US. And it is usually much more like a syrup than it is like a fruit. So in this case, not only is sugar being added, it's being added in a deceptive way. Like as a parent, why would you assume that Nestle is doing that to you? It just almost seems like a little too diabolical to be true. Baby snacks are huge business. Over the past decade, they have risen from 10% of the total UK baby food market to 21%. Pushing snacks on babies and their parents has been one of the ways the food industry has continued to make a tidy profit out of babies despite declining birth rates. So there are less babies, but the food industry is still managing to make more cash by getting the current babies to eat more ultra-processed food. Guys, I mean, sometimes I actually don't know how the food industry could get more cartoonishly evil. The 2025 version of It's Like Taking Candy from a Baby is It's Like Giving Candy to a Baby. That's what these companies are up to right now. Taking candy from babies by giving candy to babies. And it is not okay. These finger food snacks are easily the most lucrative form of baby food for manufacturers, and half of them are ultra processed, whether organic or not. I recently tried my first packet of veggie straws by the Kittylicious brand, marketed as fun and colorful for little fingers. I feel like everyone has a veggie straw phase when trying to get healthier, apparently including toddlers. Veggie straws are hollow, low on veg, tiny quantities of beetroot, kale, and other veg are used more for color than for flavor, and high on potato starch and refined rapeseed oil, canola oil. I can't say the taste thrilled me because I could hardly detect one. A slick of oil on my tongue was the main impression given by these pallid sticks, whose colors were much less vibrant than the packet art. Yet when I got to the end of the miniature 12-gram packet, I felt myself scrambling in the bag for more, like I did when I was a compulsive eater binging crisps as a teenager. Also, guys, look at the package. Encourages self-feeding. So I guess they're just admitting they made them addictive then? Don't worry, parents. You won't have trouble getting your baby to eat these. Not like those stupid real vegetables, right, parents? And the so-called vegetables in these veggie straws, an afterthought, jammed in at the end here. Probably just a little sprinkling of powdered veggies. These are really not veggie straws. They're like 7 powders and some canola oil. And yeah, the fact that the author had an addictive experience, just not surprising given that oftentimes these foods are specifically manufactured to be addictive. So the thought of giving them to a baby or a toddler is truly mind-blowing. Like, just the idea of trying to get babies addicted, can these guys have a few years out of the womb before you try and get them hooked on your stuff? Just a few years. Someone who has been trying to get the government to take the problem seriously is Dr. Vicky Sibson, director of First Steps Nutrition Trust, a charity that provides resources and reports on children's food. Sibson tells me that Melanie Smith's experience in Lincoln are far from unique. 2 years ago, she co-authored a report for First Steps on ultra-processed food in the diets of infants and young children in the UK. She found that between the ages of 4 and 6 months, when the official health advice is for babies not to have even started solid food yet, 34% of all babies in the UK are fed some form of industrially produced baby snacks. How is this legal? As Simpson told me, most parents imagine foods in the baby aisle are heavily regulated. I mean, at that point, it's like, how are parents seriously supposed to know that a product that literally has a picture of a child, their baby's age on it, is a food that's inappropriate for a baby of that age? People are just so set up to fail at every single turn, and it is so messed up. Speaking on behalf of the baby food industry, Declan O'Brien of the British Specialist Nutrition Association told me that baby foods are strictly regulated to ensure their quality and nutritional composition. Yet there are, I was staggered to learn, no specific legal limits on sugar thresholds in any UK baby foods. I mean, if you guys aren't regulating sugar, the main thing that babies aren't supposed to have, then what is even left to be strictly regulated? You know, studies have found that even savory baby foods have tons of added sweetness. Clearly, no one around the office is doing a very thorough job regulating if they're even letting sugar into the savory baby foods. So I feel like strictly regulated was extremely generous. Something you never saw 20 years ago that has become entirely normal is the sight of a young child in a pushchair slurping his or her lunch from the nozzle of a pouch. Now we're talking about these. These pouches have become the most popular type of baby food by far. Just look into the aisle. And this comes with some serious issues, as we've already alluded to / discussed. One of the purposes of weaning a baby onto solid food at 6 months is to expose them to a range of flavors and textures so they can gradually learn to enjoy the varied diet their bodies need. By contrast, these pouches reinforce a preference for sweetness and smoothness. The era of pouch feeding started in 2006 with Ella's Kitchen, now the UK's largest baby food firm. Ella's Kitchen changed the whole landscape of baby food, Lung says. For an occasional quick snack on the move, a pouch is undeniably handy. But for many families around the world, they have become a way of life that continues long after babyhood. An article in the Los Angeles Times last year featured a mother from Pittsburgh whose 7-year-old was still eating 2 or 3 pouches every day. Some of the brands explicitly push the idea of them as something for all ages of children. That's so weird. On one pouch of Ella's Kitchen puree for 4-month-olds, I noticed the label said, "I am also great for older little ones who will love my tastes for years to come." So creepy. In other words, babies are only meant to eat baby food for a short period of time. But something about or in these pouches is so irresistible to toddlers that these kids are evolving past the baby food stage, but still continuing to eat baby food. It's just so crazy to think about 5, 6, 7-year-olds eating food that's like developmentally inappropriate for them. There's a reason it's called baby food, and there's a reason you're supposed to graduate from it. And it's not just these pouches either, because in some instances, these pouches are really just like super convenient applesauce. Like literally the more desserty flavors are like convenient applesauce. You can kind of see why a parent might give their kid this non-messy form of applesauce, even as they age out of being a toddler. But the food industry is even going beyond this. They're also trying and succeeding at getting kids to drink this sort of like baby formula past being babies. They call it growing up milk, and it's for kids between the ages of 1 and 3. It's usually made of powdered milk, vegetable oil, and loaded with corn syrup or other sugars. It is insanely sweet. But kids aren't supposed to have either of these products, and they're both stunting these kids' development. I'm just gonna keep reading off more of this because it just keeps getting crazier. According to First Steps Nutrition Trust, parents should be actively discouraged from buying these baby pouches. The most successful food that every single baby is eating right now should be actively discouraged from eating it. Think about that. The NHS guidance on weaning makes no mention of them anywhere. Pouch feeding goes against NHS advice that infants be discouraged from sucking from spouts and teats after the age of 6 months. Most of the pouches have small print on the back advising that the contents should be squeezed into a bowl or onto a spoon before being offered to babies. Most popular baby food in the aisle, loaded in the aisle. Not appropriate for babies. And you might be thinking, well, why are parents buying them? Is it because they're cheap? Nope. It's often said processed foods are a cheap way to eat, but in the baby food aisle, they are eye-wateringly expensive. 4 tiny packets of organics, cheese, and herbs puffs are $2.38 at Asda. I think that's like $5, maybe. I don't know. It's not cheap. The high price seems to be part of why these products are so popular among all classes in the UK. It wrongly reassures parents that they are feeding their child something good. Pisses me off like so much, actually. It actually makes me so mad. One mother on a low income said she used the puree to get the nutrients in, and the packaged finger foods just to play with and explore the textures. Literally just trying to do something nice for her kid. I for real don't get how people work at these companies. I just don't get it. You know, they're normal, everyday people, and yet they work there and they make products like this. It doesn't compute for me. One of the wealthier mothers said she liked Ella's kitchen pouches because they had lovely ingredients in them, so she didn't have to worry that there was too much sugar or anything like that. Although the pouches are costly, some of the mothers on lower incomes liked them because at least they knew the contents wouldn't be wasted to the bin, as one parent put it. These parents trust these products. They think they're doing better for their kids. And this trust is being exploited. How bad do things have to get in the baby food aisle before the government finally decides to protect infants and parents from this flood of oversweetened and highly processed food and drinks? The government's reaction to the committee's recommendations has been half-hearted, to say the least. This is in the UK, in case you didn't already know that. In a response issued on 30th January, the Department of Health acknowledged the concern about growing up milks, but announced no new regulations beyond continuing to review the evidence. As for baby food in general, the government responded that we already have comprehensive regulations in place. The health secretary said, "It is our ambition to make our country's children the healthiest generation that has ever lived. But apparently this doesn't extend to helping them eat healthier food during their very earliest months." And that is part of why I make these videos, because it really is up to us. There's 3 parties responsible here: the corporations, the governments, and then the people. No one's making sure your baby's healthy. Junk food is being marketed as health food to unsuspected people, including babies. It's making people sick. It's making people addicted. It's making the world a worse place. The only solution that seriously has any hope of success is everyday people changing their eating habits. You know, it's one thing if someone is buying their kid junk food intentionally. It's an entire other thing if people think that they're buying their children the most wholesome thing possible, something that's healthier than a home-cooked meal, and then that turns out to be a complete lie. When you can't trust the food companies, the solution is real food. The solution is making the food at home ourselves. We cannot rely on these people, clearly. I feel like if you can't be trusted with babies and toddlers, just imagine what you're doing to the adults. Anyway, you guys know this will not be my last ultra-processed food video. So if you're interested in that, make sure you're subscribed to stay in the loop. I've also already made a ton of ultra-processed food videos, so if you haven't checked them out, you can see them here. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed B. Wilson's article as much as I did, and I will see you in the next one.